If the Pokemon Go community is known for one thing, it's charts and how fast they make them. So with the Pokemon GO Johto update just being a few days old right now, we're already working on Gen 2 rankings, attackers, defenders, DPS, strongest Pokemon, best Pokemon. It's all over the place right now, and it is not taking a lot of time, but it looks like Blissey is king, and there's a couple of second generation Pokemon that are finding their way up the list as well. So this is kind of like a top 10 strongest best Pokemon right now, and it seems like there's probably going to have to be some nerfs to Blissey or the way that gyms are structured, so maybe this won't be as viable as future updates happen, or maybe there's also going to be a lot more work. This is still fairly preliminary, but this is just the overall results, and yeah, Blissey is as bad as everyone says. We can also go and break down some of the other defenders, attackers, and then develop our own little meta, because honestly, I've been seeing more people run the Dazzling Gleam as a special move on the Blissey, because you're going to expect a lot of Dragonite, a lot of Tyranitar, a lot of fighting Pokemon to try to take down a Blissey, so having that super effective hit is something that's a little better. Also, we're going to talk about the current battle mechanics right now, because there's a lot of posts talking about how people are playing the game and how the anticipation is with all of that right there. So right now, a lot of people are using the Pokebattler app to try to determine which Pokemon are stronger than others and how it works for attack and defense, and it pretty much just lets you set the Pokemon's power and then just kind of have attack strategies and simulation types. So that's kind of it. People are going to be running hundreds and thousands of simulations to try to figure out what the best Pokemon are and how these tier lists unfold. But as we can see, the top 10 for attackers, Blissey's actually up there. That Blissey is just such a durable Pokemon and has just enough damage to where, yeah, it still works as a very threatening attacker as well. And with the changes to Water Gun, I believe it did get a damage buff, even though all of the other quick moves were nerfed. Vaporeon is also a very threatening attacker as well. Then we see Dragonite and Tyranitar. Tyranitar is showing to be fairly powerful with its high CP, Bite, and Crunch. Then we can kind of go down the list and see Snorlax, Gyarados, Machamp, Lapras, Rhydon, and Donphan. So I'm guessing Machamp is climbing up because of how strong Blissey is, and also just because there's a lot of other counters like the Tyranitar. So I don't know what these simulations were run on necessarily, that they won't post it with full context, but I'm just guessing that's just like pairing a lot of Pokemon against a lot of the other common Pokemon and just seeing how the rankings go from there. But it does look like there are some other fairly surprising Pokemon for power as well. That Heracross is also a pretty solid Pokemon that a lot of people have been running into the Blissey, so it's a good counter right there. And then it also just has a lot of attack and can hold its own. And we can see some other Pokemon, you know, Lapras, Gyarados, Snorlax. These guys have always been there. As we scroll further down the list, we can see some other Pokemon as we go into the top 20 with Arcanine, Omastar, Crobat, Flareon, Golem, and then we can work our way up the list. And Feraligatr kind of being a surprising Pokemon, just a water type that does pretty well overall. But the gym defenders are also kind of mixed up right here. That Blissey, it's just number one in both, but Snorlax is still going to be a very powerful gym defender, and it takes all the way down to number 8 at Espeon until we see another Gen 2 Pokemon. So all the first generation Pokemon are still holding it down as both defenders and attackers of gyms. And we can see some different ones. We got Slowking, Tyranitar, Slowbro, Steelix. So Onix kind of going from one of the worst Pokemon to now Steelix actually being a pretty competent defender. Alakazam with its moveset changes also getting a little bit of an interesting power tweak. And then kind of scrolling down as we see a lot of And then we can scroll down and see just a lot of Psychic-type Pokemon as the gym defenders. So pretty much you can use these charts and developing tier lists to kind of know what to expect, what attackers are going to be working against what defenders, and then just kind of understanding the metagame and how super tryhard people can get when it comes to Pokemon Go. Then we can also see some other charts. Pokemon Go highest DPS by type. So pretty much just taking stab moves and then going for like super insane stab combos and then trying to find out the strongest Pokemon from there. So if you really want to balance out what's like hard offensive of a single typing, these are going to be the most powerful Pokemon for that. And there are some surprising ones, like, oh, by the way, Venomoth is the strongest one right there, and that's just because of just the comboing that you see. It's Infestation, Bug Buzz. It's having the dual with a quick move and a special move, while also being the most powerful for that typing, and then gaining a same type attack boost. Or in the case of Alakazam, with Fairy type moves, just having Dazzling Gleam and then being being the strongest user of it, because according to this double asterisk right here, there are no fairy quick moves, therefore the strongest Dazzling Gleam user, even with the same type attack boost, is just going to be the one that gets it. So Alakazam, interestingly enough, going to be the best for the fairy type moves right there. And then one big one that people are going to be looking for are going to be the fighting moves. So Machamp with Counter and Dynamic Punch, actually the strongest fighting Pokemon in the second generation. I imagine that Heracross is probably short behind on the Machamp right there. So if you need to take down a Blissey base, that's kind of where your focus needs to be. Gengar, heck, Shadow Ball has insane power for Ghost type Pokemon. Also, another interesting aspect is the Dragonite, Dragon Breath, and Dragon Pulse. Now, some of these do include legacy moves. So if you want the highest DPS Dragonite, it's actually going to be a legacy Dragonite with that Dragon Pulse. And there's a couple of other ones like the Earthquake and the Rock Slide. So just kind of another list to make sure you understand what the DPS numbers are, how to utilize type effectiveness, seeing how it's going to work for offenses and defenses and whatnot. And there you go, guys. So some craziness right there. And now it's time to break down what is going on with gyms and Blissey, because Blissey is just one of the strongest Pokemon out there, and people are trying to run Pokemon like the Vaporeon, like the Dragonite, to see how much of that effectiveness goes. And as you can see, usual attempts end up in death or timeout for the Vaporeon, and only do the very best of best attempts actually end in taking down a Blissey, but then you're pretty much out of time anyways. That when it came down to this one, you know, seconds before timeout, Vaporeon is still hanging in there and trying to make it happen. Now, the Dragonite was actually able to finish it off quite a bit faster, but you're still running out of time and you're cutting it close. But the Vaporeon only had 3 hit points left, and the Dragonite only had 16 hit points left as well. And as you can see, the caption is dodging charge moves as much as possible. So that's going to be one of the biggest things, that if you are playing a casual game and you're just like mashing and you're not focusing on dodging as much, a Blissey is going to absolutely wreck you. So you will need to kind of add some kind of strategy, but then you can see, like, as the video is going on, there's little captions like, oh, forgot to dodge, or oh, didn't get the dodge. Because one big problem right now is that quick moves are slower overall, so it could put you in a position where you might miss a dodge just because you're using that quick move. So you do have to pay attention to the Blissey's potential charge, and if it lands several charge moves on you, you're losing that battle no matter what. As you can see, it's like usual attempts versus best attempts, so only at peak play with some of these strongest Pokemon can you match up against a Blissey right now. That's kind of the scariness. And this kind of translates into analysis. Result of new move balance become casual. Oh, that's a little ferocious right there, but I wonder if this is actually an intentional change. That while people are upset about Niantic for the move balance being all screwy right now, maybe the idea was to make this a more casual game, because if you're not, you know, on the Sylph Road, if you're not on the Reddit, and you're not using all these calculators, like, there's so many tools and resources right here. We have the Pokemon Go Game Press with tier lists and stuff. As I mentioned, charts are all over the place. We have battle simulators, and if you aren't running this to do 100% perfect Pokemon with the best stats possible and the highest CP and the most optimized movesets, so it kind of makes it to where if you're not utilizing all of these tools while also understanding how to get the best, highest, most optimal Pokemon with the best CP and the strongest moves and just absolute perfection on everything, including your overall battle style, you're going to kind of get wiped out. So that's why people are just saying, well, time to become casual, even though you're still going to have a lot of benefit from playing on a try-hard or a more advanced level. I think that with the millions and tens of millions of people that play Pokemon Go and the average audience not being nearly as hardcore, that from what I've seen, that it's almost like the video game, that if you don't understand breeding and IVs and EV training and having the right natures and having the right moveset, you're going to have a very bad time against a more skilled battler. But this is just an app. This is just Pokemon in one of its simplest forms, actually painfully simple, that a lot of people do have problems with, that the battling is so simplistic and the movesets and whatnot, but it is Pokemon in one of its simplest forms. It's just, you're supposed to go out and catch Pokemon in the real world, and it's not fun if you just get walled out and trashed by people that are actually super tryharding. So making the game a bit more casual is going to help Pokemon Go for retaining players. I think that's actually a good decision, because I don't think Pokemon Go was supposed to become this complex from how simple of a base that it has. So the TLDR, move balance takes away distinct offensive defensive movesets, screws a lot of Pokemon that used to be good, and shifts the meta even closer to bland uniformity. So while that does sound kind of bad, I think that if you could just play what you want and do better off of the move changes, that is a pretty good thing. But one issue is that DPS is now king. That there actually used to be a lot of breakdown to sacrificing DPS to get your charge moves faster, therefore your overall DPS went up, but now it's just mash quick moves because of the changes right here. In almost all cases, moves that deal more damage are simply better than overall moves. Duration for existing attack was lengthened, and energy generation per use was decreased for most moves as well. Moves like Confusion, which deal 20 damage in 2.1 seconds, is better than Zen Headbutt, which deals 12 damage in 1.55 seconds. Confusion has a higher DPS on offense or defense, even though Zen Headbutt has a better energy per second. So it just kind of shows that, yep, DPS is it. Don't have to worry about energy strats, dodging, or then like timing your special moves just right. No, just do whatever, and then that's going to be it. So ranking for the best offensive moves on Espeon, just kind of showing that no matter what, Confusion's going to win. No matter what, Confusion's going to win. They just go for the highest DPS, and then you kind of win. Also, Glass Cannons versus tanks. Because every move takes longer to perform, your ability to dodge is hampered. This hurts fragile but powerful attackers. And that kind of goes back to what we saw with this video, that the best attempts with perfection and dodging and having the right battle strategy is what's going to actually make you win against a Blissey compared to losing against a Blissey. But it also means that a skilled battler has a higher advantage just from having the right dodge mechanics, and now that has kind of been nerfed because of the way that the quick moves are playing right now. So it's pretty much. There's also charge move changes. You may have noticed that many 2-bar charge moves are now 1-bar moves, or 3/4 bar moves are now 2-bar moves. This has a profound effect on the meta. In most cases, 2-bar moves are better. In most cases, 2-3-bar moves will be outright better than their 1-bar counterparts because the base power for many 2-bar moves has been increased enormously. So just kind of looking at the move balance, looking at it. So the takeaway is, if you want to try hard gems, then you just have to look for the highest DPS because it's just outperforming right now, and your other strategies won't have as much of an impact when playing in the second generation. Looking at some other things, Dragonite, Gyarados, try these more powerful common attackers. So looking at some of the other Pokemon that have just kind of rose in power, Ursaring actually looking to be a top tier attacker, even though we didn't see it on this list. That's also one reason why we just kind of have to wait to see if anything else balances out with all of these damages and whatnot. Same is also looking to be true with Heracross, and while a lot of people did think it was going to be an exclusive, like a regional Pokemon, it just shows that it's just an uncommon Pokemon in some biomes, so it has a very high rarity, but you can still use it with counter as a quick move, and then having insane close combat, as Blissey, Snorlax, hard counter, or Mega Horn as a grass killer. Primeape is another one, Piloswine, Crobat, Jinx, and Xatu, and also Haunter. The new Gengar is so good that even Haunter is high on the list of attackers. That's kind of crazy to think about. Also, yeah, with this list, we don't see much Gengar, but I have seen a lot of Gengar in high DPS charts because of the move changes and all the things like that. So we are going to see some other very powerful Pokemon to use, which means, yeah, you can run Haunter, and that's kind of hilarious right there. So Piloswine is good, and it's just going to get stronger as we get a Mamoswine, so it's not going to be a waste for having a high CP Piloswine that can evolve in future generations, and it seems to do just well in the second generation. Crobat is powerful, Jinx, and Xatu. So getting a nice little bit of balance, and it looks like the meta is that, you know, Blissey, Snorlax, all of these Pokemon are just so powerful that fighting is just good as super effective coverage. Kind of like how Electric-type Pokemon got some play in Generation 1 just because the water-dominant meta, that you had Vaporeon, you had Blastoise, you had Lapras, all these dominating Pokemon. So having extra tech options for dealing with what's powerful does tend to do pretty well, and then I give up with gems. So even after all this, Blissey is still pretty frustrating, and if you have someone that's super tryharding, it is going to make you have a bad time. So there we go, guys. That is going to be a Pokemon Go discussion of the strongest Pokemon in the game right now. Also looking ahead at some other ones are going to climb through the tier list, and then we're going to get a bit more as it comes. I really want to have like a top 10 best movesets or top 10 best Pokemon video today, but it looks like we're still a little early on that, so it could be a couple more weeks until we understand perfectly which Pokemon are the best at doing what in the Johto Pokemon Go season. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.